to go. My name is Brett. I'm the founder of Pupil Progress. Joining us on the webinar this afternoon is a Pupil Progress leadership team, and they'll be able to actually answer any questions. So what I'll do is I'll actually just get going straight away. So I'm just going to share screen. Now, the whole premise of this webinar is for us to discuss actually the current data point system that is currently used in schools. And what we want to talk about is a number of things. As former senior leaders, deputy heads, there's all three of the Pupil Progress leadership team have all been assistant principals at secondary level, and were teachers for 12 years each. We know that there's some actual issues with the current data point system, and what you're looking at specifically is the concerns that we have with the current systems that are being used. Now, we're fully aware that the schools are only using what they currently have at their disposal, so the data point system has been created with what you currently have only available to you, and is as efficient as it possibly can be. Concerns with the accuracy of the data. We're going to talk more about actually the level of accuracy of the actual calculation of the grade being submitted at each data point, and also actually is that representative of where the students are specifically. We know there's a disconnect with a lot of the teachers not necessarily actually entering the data that should be entered. We're going to talk more about that as well. Huge delays. We know that, from our past experience and talking with a number of schools, we've worked with hundreds of schools over the last 24 months, that there's a huge delay in getting the information you need. And the disconnect, the important thing here is actually, I remember as a teacher and with conversations of schools, is the data point was actually quite removed from actually what we needed as teachers to teach the next lesson, and was also perceived as a bit of well, this is something that is just needed at senior management level and not actually necessarily what I need for my next lessons. And therefore, what we really want to challenge is actually getting teachers and faculties back connected with the actual really meaningful data that drives teaching and learning. And that's actually what the whole purpose of this is not just to make this easier for data managers. That's part of it, it's a byproduct, but ultimately what we're really passionate about driving here is an improvement in teaching and learning. And that is something that's really fundamental to this, because we see the current data point system actually eating into that time and quality of teaching and learning. And that's the key message that we want to communicate this afternoon. Now, when we discuss this accuracy, one of the core issues that we're dealing with is actually where the data is coming from at its core, at its source, which is, we know department areas are using spreadsheets that are created by themselves, and there's a huge inconsistency among each of the department areas where they're creating their own versions of their own Excel spreadsheets, own Google Sheets. Quite rightly, that's the only tool that's at their disposal, but there's a varying level of ability within those department areas to be able to create those trackers that make it accurate. There is inconsistencies with the calculations that are used. I'll give you some specific examples. People calculating grades from percentages because that's the best they can do with the knowledge of how to use Excel. Some people creating their own grade boundaries. Some people using averages of multiple assessments because there is no key, actual methodology or consistent methodology used across all department areas. So at that core level, the data actually being calculated at a data point, there is real flaws with the information being actually entered into that analysis machine. This low accuracy also stems from a real capacity issue, which is the ability to be able to quality assure. So that quality assurance and the maintenance of those trackers questions who is actually physically going to the music department, checking that it meets the specification requirements, checking that the calculations actually meet the spec. And on top of that, that there has been no error in actually creating the formulas, who's making sure once it's been built for that teacher that nothing's been damaged in the last term. We know that most, or if not all, heads of department try and protect their sheets and only they enter the data because they don't want anyone mucking around with any formulas used, etc., etc. Curriculum changes. I mean, we've made we've lost count of how many curriculum changes that we've had to make as a result of, changes to our trackers as a result of curriculum changes that come directly from the exam boards. How, how effective the departments have been at actually updating their trackers to meet those curriculum changes. Again, the accuracy of the calculations, the formulas, the adjustments, the weightings, all of those impact on the actual accuracy of the calculation of work in that grade. And then, of course, the time it takes to physically build those trackers. We've discussed as well that consistency with the methodology. That's also something that's a real concern of the varying, some department areas calculate their grade by using certain processes that differ from other areas, exam-based subject areas versus practical subjects, and it makes it, again, that the inconsistency across how that is calculated causes inaccuracies in the whole score analysis. Other things that are causing a real concern with this data point entry is the amount of time it physically takes to actually double data entry, sometimes triple data entry in certain schools. This data that's being calculated at department level, people using Google Sheets, Microsoft Excel, some people still using Word, or even in some cases we worked with schools where they're still actually tracking progress on an actual physical pen and paper mark book. That data being entered into SIMS or to your central MIS is very, very time consuming. So not only has the assessment's been marked, then actually calculated, then typed into their own trackers, has then got to be manually actually typed into the central school system. That's a really, really labor intensive process, and again delays the information that we need in order to inform teaching and learning, and also to get it into the students' hands to empower the students. To add to this inefficiency, we know that the data team have a real job of making sure not only logistically chasing departments to get the data in, for that to be in the right format, for it to be actually uploaded into CISRA, to actually check all of the data is there, again, to make sure there is no inaccuracies. Data being passed across these multiple systems is, again, causes huge delays and inaccuracies with the data at the top end of the analysis. We know that this can take 2 to 3 weeks. Now, we've had some schools say, yeah, Brett, we get this, we can do this in a day, 2 days maximum. When we actually speak to these schools, they've got 3 members of staff doing that. And secondly, they are also talking about the process of when the data is in their central system, and the data going from their central system into CISRA or Formatrix takes a day. And there's 2.5 of them, 2 at best, sometimes 3. And the other side of this is that we're not considering the amount of time that the teachers are taking at this stage, which is to actually calculate the data and then enter the data in there. So, we've pushed back on that and said that there's no way that the whole school is entering that volume of data within 1 day and it coming out at the top end analysis, because that's just simply not possible with considering the current systems that are available to schools. So the first part of the solution we want to talk about is that accuracy. And actually what we serve to do as a software is provide really high level functionality at tracker department level, so that it calculates the grade exactly as the exam board calculates the grade, allows teachers to add their own tests, and is going to demonstrate the system at the end of this presentation and show you that what it can physically do. First and foremost, the accuracy can be dramatically improved with the use of our system. That can also then directly go into SIMS, be imported into SIMS, ready for it to be uploaded to CISRA or Formatrix, if that's a system that you currently have that's very difficult to remove or move away from. We also can import the data directly into CISRA or Formatrix, again, making the process far more efficient and far more accurate from the use of our trackers. You can also now, and a lot of schools are starting to do this, who use us at a whole school level, move away from the analytics, actually importing into any other analytics tool, and use our own pupil progress overview. That means there is only one single point of entry for staff, one single point of entry. That's really important, because that's that efficiency and time piece where there's no delay in the key information that teachers need in order to teach the very next lessons after those key assessments. So what I wanted to do is actually reflect on some of the actual typical data cycles that you would see. Now, this is actually a year 10 data cycle where we would see quite commonly two data point 1, 2, and 3 at these points in the year, usually split by terms. And you can see actually when those assessments are taking place, when there's a data collation period, and then actually analysis and then an intervention action plan. Now, you can see that in year 11, that becomes slightly more it's tighter quite naturally. Year 11 is pretty much almost cut in half. So the pressure is on in year 11. It's a really difficult time period. And what we want to talk about here, you can see this data point 1 and data point 2. The first point at which we want to actually support and help schools move away from is actually the speed. If you're going to do a core assessment, which is a full mock, okay, if you're going to do a core assessment, the use of our system is going to help with you being able to actually speed up that process. So you can see here from data collation, which is actually the assessment taking place, that might be a full mock, everything marked, all of that data being calculated. So a specific example of that is if you've done a full test and you need to calculate the grade based on other elements of the course too, so practical elements, coursework elements. If it's 100% exam, you've still got to actually use a system of some kind to calculate what that actually means as a grade. Are you using an average from your previous mock, etc., etc.? Then you've got to enter the data into the system, and then the MIS team have got to collate that information, and then it's able to be imported into your analysis tool. So that's what makes up this collation period here. And then you've actually got your intervention planning once the data is in, checked and verified, which is why we have, from the actual point where we can start taking action, is actually still 6 weeks, which is still far too long. And if you're doing it really well, best case, you're talking 4 weeks. But if you're like, optimum 3.5, but most schools it's taking at least 4 to 5 weeks. With pupil progress as the first part of this, we can speed that process up an awful lot. And what you're looking at now is, because a department area can input the data in directly from their assessments and what's been marked, you'll be able to see that the collation and analysis and intervention can start to happen almost immediately. And you can see the difference in the timeframes in which are happening here. I'll give you a specific example. A history department, they might actually physically sit their assessment on the 10th of October. By the 14th, the papers can be marked and data entered, which means that they can actually start planning their intervention almost immediately after the test. Okay, so we're not having to wait for the whole school to engage with this. Each individual department area can start taking action immediately. The comparison between the two, you can see our latest data point is obviously far later, and we're actually gaining 6 weeks here. You can see as a result of moving away from that model. And you can also see how is this happening. Again, it's those instant trackers that have that highest level of functionality, the instant data point entry, which then allows us to get an instant overview from a department level so they can start taking action very, very quickly. We look at it at a whole school level, and again, specifically, you can see here, this is all of the school engaging in a whole school assessment. That's every single department area at this point having marked their papers and data entered. Because it's going into one system and it's only one point of data entry, we are buying ourselves a huge amount of time. And you can see here, it's actually increasing our learning time by 8 weeks in comparison to previous data point models, where you're actually reducing that time dramatically by 2 or 3 weeks. And you can see now the impact of being able to analyze directly after that assessment point, because the data is going in instantly from a department level and accessible from a department level much more quickly. In comparison, again, between the two, you can see that this data point is actually 6 weeks faster. And the most important part here is that this is now much more impactful learning, given the information that is able to be received far earlier, and buying 10 to 12 weeks of quality intervention time before the exams, rather than maybe the 6 weeks that you would have on the previous model. Now, the most important part, now this is the really important part, because we're actually talking about schools moving away from the data point, and that is the data point is being removed. We know that there might be key assessments. You might have a full mock series. We know that's really important for students to understand what the exam process is and what a full mock looks like. The point here is actually pupil progress allows those assessments in between that individual departments will really want to use in order to keep gauging progress. At the moment, schools are reliant on that single point, that high stakes test, as their only way of finding out how students are performing. Pupil progress is allowing individual departments to run assessments mid-point as well as outside of those high stakes assessments that meet the criteria and needs of those individual department areas, and therefore allow a live picture of where those students are performing at any point, allowing intervention plans to take place at any point in the year. We are not relying on a data point to tell us what action we need to take. Each individual department area is able to see exactly where their students are all the time, so that they are able to intervene at any point and not have to wait for the outcomes of a data point. And that's the whole purpose of this. Not only can we speed up key assessment frames or timeframes, most importantly, we can move away to a model where we are not reliant on seeing where students are from those data points. And that's the most important part of this whole entire presentation. Now, that leads us to moving on to actually what we're serving to do with that process is improve the connection with data. That means the data that I'm entering is to do with how are my students in my classes performing, so that I can look at what needs to be taught in the very next lesson. That's that connection with data, not like you just need to put in a grade and then give that into the whole school. And making sure as well that there's an accuracy, because the senior managers and the line managers can see actually what's happening at tracker level, that what's being reported is actually what's happening and not what the teacher wants to report as a result of not really wanting to look like they're not actually performing well as a teacher. And of course, what we've discussed is the improved accuracy. And of course, what we've discussed is the importance of an improved efficiency. Most importantly, that improved efficiency is effectively increasing the volume of teaching time or better quality teaching that you're able to achieve. Now, I'm actually going to pass over very quickly to Andrew, who's going to actually demonstrate the system for us to actually physically show you what you can experience as a school by using our system to improve this whole process. So if you bear with us one moment, we're just going to change presenters.
So, using our trackers, one of the things that you're able to do instantly is be able to go into any subject area and have a really high level of functionality. So to begin with, I'm going to show you initially that this is an English language tracker. It's set up to create a grade exactly as the exam boards do in Year 11. You can see here that it's linked to the June 2019 grade boundaries. You have the ability to adjust those if you wish. You can also inflate and deflate as you see fit. And you'll see here that Paul is on a minimum target grade of a 5. As I'm going to add some data in here, you're going to see that you'll get an instant feedback for exactly where Paul should be. So Paul here is grading a 3 or a 4. That's gone amber because he's 1 under his target grade, but you're also going to notice that the AOs are immediately filled in as this comes across. We can also see here that as we pull across into the summer area, we've got a 4 in the paper, so we've got a working at grade effectively coming across here, but the total marks from that paper are 38, so we've got a current grade of a 2 alongside the percentage within each of those AOs. Now, as I just fill this tracker in completely, we'll start to see a development here as it becomes full to be able to give that feedback straight back to students for exactly where they are. So in that second assessment, Paul's got a 6. It's coming across to give an average of a 5. Now, one of the things we want to be able to do is create that connection with students and their data. So at the touch of a button, what you're able to do is completely pull this into a report. So we can see here that Paul's minimum target grade is on a 5, the current grade and average unit grade are both on a 5 as the tracker is full. We've got the difference between a 4 in the first unit and a 6 in the second. We can see how many marks away we are from each of the next grades. We've got the exact percentage scores of each of the AOs, and then we've got the elements here in terms of paper 1 and paper 2, the marks within each of those papers, and real focus on where they would be. Now, I'm just going to nip back here to come back into showing you how this looks with a little bit more detail when you see a tracker that's more full. So you can see on the top here, we can see the average marks as well for each question. So you would know as a teacher exactly where there was strength in your teaching and where there would need to be development. You can also see the average scores for each of the AOs. So I would know if I was teaching this English class that I've got particular strengths with AO2 and AO4, but my AO3 needs some very serious amount of work, it would appear. I've also, using Pupil Progress, able to see the progress score both for the class and for every individual student. I can see the average marks for each unit alongside the average mark that each student has received, as well as seeing how many marks each student is off of getting the next grade. Now, one of the things here when looking at the depth of the data point is that you don't always want to assess just by exam question. You want to have that ability to be able to assess as you see fit. So if we were focusing here on this 24-mark question, we want to look at that one in more detail. The average is 13, and we can see the difference between John and Billy is like 15 and 5. So that's going to be an area you want to focus on. One of the things that you can do is you can enter end of topic tests. You'll attach it to the specific unit that you want to be part of. So I'll call this the 24-mark essay assessment. You can set a date if you wish. You can count it towards your current and projected grade so that it's on a parity with an exam paper. You can then apply question level analysis. So that's all based on AO5, and that's got a value of 24 marks. You can add other questions if you wanted to. You can build up effectively your own exam paper, and as well as being able to have the flexibility to decide of your grade boundaries, if you'd want them harder, if you'd want to eat it, or whether they want to stay the same. And you can apply that into all of your classes as you see fit. Once you've saved that end of topic test, you're in a position that you can go into your class and you can start developing exactly where the marks are. So we can see that 24-mark essay assessment here. John scored 15 in that the first time. Now there's a development of that to 18, and Elizabeth has gone up from 10 to 16. And let's do one more. Billy's gone up from 5 to 14. And you can see that you're getting a scaled score that is coming out here, and then it's giving you a grade. And because I made it count, the 8 and the 7 is coming across to a 7, the 6 and the 4 is coming across to a 5. It will also come across in that reporting. So you've got that real instant live feedback that is coming back from the assessments that you choose to put together to give real clarity on exactly where your students are and exactly what you need to do to see them advance. Taking further from this, you've got the ability to be able to see actually how are my class doing. So we know that our students are really focused on their data. They know what leaps they need to make. How do I as a classroom teacher know how I need to advance these students? So I can go into any subject at any point and I can pull this data live. So as I pull here on English and looking at that element that we were just looking at, we can see here that I've got my entire year group of 55 students. I've got a live attainment score of 4.84 when we should be there as of my minimum target grades. I've got a live P8 score of 0.08, and again off of my minimum target grades I need to be there. I can see how many students are above target, on target, one grade away and off target, as well as being able to see exactly how every class compares to the overall year group, and then again across to each class. So we've got 5.24 against 6.19 or 4.48, again against the percentage of students that are above, on target, one grade away, off target. You can see those as a breakdown, so you'd be able to compare your classes and you would know exactly what progress is being made for each class, as well as being able to have those discussions in your line management meetings or in your departmental meetings about what's happening to make your reds turn amber and your ambers turn green, etc. All right, we can all see at the touch of a button how many students are on a grade 4. I can see there's 18 students here, which represents 45 of my cohort. So we're working at 82% 4+. My target though would be 95%. So I've got the ability to know exactly where they are. I can also see in terms of my subgroups exactly what's going on in terms of my high, middle and lower attainers, my boys against girls, my pupil premium, my looked after students, my EL students and my SEN basis. Any information you want to give us, we can see an attainment score for that particular group alongside a progress score for that particular group, and then within those subgroups how many students are performing above, on, one grade or off target. So that gives you the confidence that you would know using our system that you're able to impact on the groups that really need work. You're able to hone in on the elements of courses where you need to see development and see progress, and then you can focus on the actual students that you need to work with to improve their target grade. So in this group particularly, we might be looking at our high achieving girls, which would be one of those main focuses. Also, using this system, you're able to put a summary on a whole school level where you can see exactly where every student is in every subject at any point. So you no longer have to wait for a data point. You're able to pull this information so you can see exactly where students are rag rated in every subject, so you would know where you need to intervene, as well as having a feeling of the exact position of each student. You've got the ability to download this, and it can be moved to other softwares if you wanted to have a higher level of analytics, but you can also see using our platform exactly what this means in terms of the school's progress score. So we've got focus on here, the school's attainment score there against the national average, as well as being able to see exactly where every student fits in terms of the English and maths element, the EBAC element, and the open element. You've got that real focus on exactly where every student is and knowing where the school is live.
So yeah, a few questions were asked on the chat. We've brought those back up now. If anyone wants a full system demonstration, by the way, some of the people were asking, can you click on that again? Can you show me again? We can actually run a full demonstration, no problem. You can actually schedule one of those through our team and we can actually go through the system properly. If you are a current whole school using our system, this was more of a demonstration about a methodology shift away from the data point, as a result of which this isn't an actual system demonstration from the purposes of a whole school. So if you are interested in more training and you are a current system user, again, contact us. We'll be able to schedule that and we'll be able to run through a proper demonstration of how to use certain functionality. The other question I wanted to field was someone asked if you could actually add your own objectives, your own assessment objectives, if you aren't actually following the exam board's assessment objectives. The answer to that would be yes. We'd be able to add that for a specific school. We'll be adding functionality at some point where you'd be able to edit it yourself and add your own and that you could then tag against certain questions. We are, advising schools to stick with what assessment objectives have been decided by the exam boards, because that's a really important process, is actually what AOs, the exam boards have actually suggested that you need to use. And that's, again, in line with the specification. So it make sure the accuracy of and the credibility of the information you're providing is at the highest level. I don't know if anyone has any other questions whatsoever. I know that obviously we've just answered those couple of questions. There's one maybe that's just come through on the chat. Yeah, that's correct. So someone has actually asked a question about this is a platform that is predominantly teacher facing. The individual reports that you can produce that Andy showed obviously can be shared with students and with parents, but this is something that the pupils can't log into yet, but it will be obviously developed given how fast the software is moving. So that's something that we will be developing relatively quickly. Price of the package, I appreciate that question. If you could actually leave your email address, you can leave that as a direct message to one of us. We'll be able to contact you directly to discuss pricing. It's actually based on the size of the school as well as the cohorts that are going through. So it's quite difficult for us to actually just say, look, the cost of the system is X. We are keen to work with the schools on price point because it's something that we're really keen to work with as many schools as we possibly can. We're currently working with close to 300 schools, and that's growing quite quickly considering the power and potential power of the software. Andy's actually just answered that one on the actual live chat. Is there any exam boards qualifications you don't cover? The answer is no, and the reason why we can confidently say no is we've pretty much built, I would say, close to 70% of every specification qualification that there is available. There isn't a qualification yet that we haven't been able to build. And the reason why we can confidently say no in terms of is there any trackers that you can't access, is if there is one that is not on our system, we can build that for you. So for example, if you currently deliver A-level history, but also need a tracker for IGCSE history or something slightly more obscure, let's say vocational qualification, we'll be able to build that within a morning if that's something that you need. We have pretty much covered every possible combination of qualifications. We've hair and beauty for citizen, for city and guilds, functional skills for both maths and English, any BTEC, all VSETs, all OCR Cambridge Nationals. So yeah, we really do cover everything. So please feel free to check out on our website the courses that we do offer currently right now. Yeah, again, Andy's had answered that question. Everything is downloadable off of our system, so you can download any data at any point. That's from any individual tracker or from the whole school overview. And again, because the data is live, currently what teachers and schools will be able to do is actually link that report to be sent back to parents. But as a current development, what we're pushing for is to be able to actually have parent and student login so they can access that information at any point. Again, that move away from only being able to access what is perceived by the school as the only point in time in which a student is working at X grade. We want that information to be live and actually really consistently available throughout the whole entire Key Stage 4 and also Key Stage 3. Another question's also come through. Yeah, again, that's also something that can be yeah. So in answer to Charlotte, I know that obviously Andy's replying directly on the chat. Yeah, we support every single department area individually. If you don't need to go away and get whole school buy-in, you can as a department get this paid for by your department budget. So please do do have a look, go and sign up for a trial if you wish. You can just go to pupilprogress.com. I'm actually just going to bring up a share screen. Just simply go to Pupil Progress and it will say create an account at the top here on the top right hand corner. And in there, you'll just be able to leave your name, your first name, surname, and it will take you through to ask for your school. There's a full list of every school. You'll choose your school and you can set up your account. We've got access to all trackers now. Up until the 31st of August at zero cost to the school as a result of our grant enabled access. So please, do feel free to go and check it out, have a play around. We'll upload your class list. We'll let you, we'll support you having as much of a play around with the system as possible between the now and the end of the year. And we've got another question. How does Pupil Progress compare to the likes of CISRA as a standalone package? So if we are not to use CISRA and replace it with Pupil Progress, being completely truthful, the level of detail in terms of how much functionality CISRA and 4 Matrix has as an analytics tool is higher than what we have as a Pupil Progress. But there's a lot of schools that are now moving away from those softwares as a result of a lot of that detail not being needed. That's a really key point there. Is a lot of schools have started to actually question how many staff actually log on to CISRA and 4 Matrix. I don't really want to sit here and talk against those softwares because they do have a really important place in the market. But I do remember as a teacher, it didn't really give me the information I needed, nor did it give me the information I needed fast enough. So a lot of schools are now realizing that whole school overview that Andy showed you, the fact that you can actually get a live P8 A8 score, it's a really, really powerful way of getting the information you need without necessarily having to use those analytics tools. And it means the staff are connected with their data. That connection with their own actual information from their assessments is actually feeding the teaching and learning, is the data that feeds the whole school picture, not just whatever numbers they want to put into the data point process. So we're not an analytics tool. We are a tracking and monitoring tool, and that's something that is, I suppose, clear distinguishing language between the two. Well, it looks like there's not many more questions coming through, which is great. If anyone does have any questions, please feel free to email us directly. We'll also send out a courtesy email and thanking you for your time this afternoon. Hopefully you're going to enjoy the weekend. And again, if you do have any questions, please let us know. Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we'll have a conversation soon.